Leaders talk through the night in Brussels, but no deal yet for Britain on its EU reform demands. David Cameron is facing a tough fight.
We've made some progress, but there's still no deal. And as I've said, I'll only do a deal if we get what Britain needs. So we're going to get back in there, we're going to do some more work, and I'll do everything I can.
A deal would pave the way for Cameron to return to London and campaign for Britain to stay in the EU ahead of a referendum on membership. Polls say voters are divided right now. During the night, there were some proposals exchanged between us, he says, notably concerning France. There is the will to have a financial regulation which can be applied to all financial capitals of Europe, and there is no right to veto, he says. Financial safeguards and migrant curbs have been the most contentious issues. Officials and diplomats were looking at reworking a draft agreement before the leaders regrouped for more talks today. The original plan was to serve up proposals over an English breakfast. It could now be an English dinner. Our reporter who's in Brussels says, according to leaked information, the British Prime Minister had new demands about EU migrant benefits, and this could make a deal even more difficult. But if they reach an agreement despite this, there might be an extraordinary government meeting today in London, where the referendum could be announced.
Zsíros Sándor, Euronews, Brüsszel.
New Austrian limits on the number of refugees allowed to cross its borders have infuriated the EU, prompting warnings that Vienna could be breaking European law. Each day, Austria is restricting new asylum claims to 80, while letting a maximum of 3,200 other migrants transit its territory. To try to ease the pressure, police chiefs from countries along the Balkan migration route have agreed to jointly register refugees as they cross from Greece into the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. Authorities will also organise their transport straight to Austria. The process won't, however, grant them status as asylum seekers. That step will take place in Austria, Germany, or whichever other country they might travel to.
American fighter jets have carried out airstrikes in Libya, targeting the self-styled Islamic State group. The US military says it targeted a senior Tunisian militant linked to two major attacks in Tunisia last year. Reports say around 30 to 40 people, most said to be ISIL recruits, have been killed. The overnight raid centred on a house not far from the Libyan capital Tripoli at Sabratha. An official in the town said the house that was hit was completely destroyed, adding that most of the dead were Tunisians who were probably ISIL members. A US officer said among those targeted was Nourdin Shushan, believed to be connected to the attack on the Bardo Museum in Tunis last year, in which more than 20 people were killed, as well as the mass shooting near the resort of Sousse 3 months later, which left almost double that number dead. It's thought both attacks were carried out by gunmen who trained in Libya.
The Turkish Prime Minister has visited the scene of a suicide bombing that claimed 28 lives earlier this week. Ahmet Davutoglu laid flowers at the scene of the blast in Ankara. Dozens of people were injured in the attack, which targeted buses carrying military personnel. Mr. Davutoglu went on to visit the hospital where many are being treated. Turkey is blaming Kurdish militants at home and in neighbouring Syria. Officials have identified the bomber as Salih Nekar, who is in his 20s and from the Hasaka region of northern Syria. They say he was a member of the Syrian Kurdish militia group, the YPG. However, the leader of the PYD party, of which the YPG is the military wing, says his party is not to blame. Turkey has also stepped up pressure on the US to cut off its support for the militias fighting the Assad regime in Syria. In the US, Democrat candidates have taken part in a town hall debate ahead of this weekend's caucus in Nevada. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders each had an hour to take questions from residents. Nevada has a large Latino population and is due to vote this Saturday.
What motivates me is what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said. You remember what he said? He said, we've got to, I'm paraphrasing, we've got to judge people based on their character, not the color of the skin, not the country that they came from.
Latinos make up around 27% of Nevada's population. They lean heavily towards the Democrat vote. This means it's a prize state for Clinton and for Sanders.
The threats that Wall Street poses. I know that Senator Sanders has also attacked President Obama. He's called him weak. He's called him disappointing. He tried to get somebody to run against him in the 2012 election in the primary. And, you know, I just don't know where all this comes from, because maybe it's that Senator Sanders wasn't really a Democrat until he decided to run for president.
There's been limited polling in Nevada. However, nationally, Clinton has 54% support among Latinos, 37% back Sanders, according to a poll by Reuters.
A Kremlin spokesman says that Russian President Vladimir Putin has been told about the arrest of the owner of one of Russia's largest airports. Dmitry Kamenchik owns Moscow's Domodedovo airport, where a suicide bombing killed 37 people 5 years ago. His arrest is linked to airport security at the time of the attack. Kamenchik faces charges over a lack of scanning equipment at the entrance to the airport. The bomber was able to carry in explosives hidden under his clothes for the attack. Russia in 2013 sentenced 3 men to life in prison for their roles in helping the suicide bomber. Domodedovo is Russia's only privately controlled airport. It's been rebuilt from an aging Soviet relic to a bustling hub used by more than 80 airlines.
There have been dramatic scenes outside Jerusalem's Old City, where Israeli security services have shot dead a Palestinian man who stabbed 2 police officers. The 2 officers, who are in their 20s, were lightly wounded. The attacker is thought to be a 20-year-old from East Jerusalem. A female bystander is believed to have been injured when the security services opened fire. It comes a day after a 21-year-old off-duty soldier was stabbed to death in a busy supermarket in the West Bank. A second person was seriously wounded in the attack, which officials say was carried out by 2 Palestinian teenagers. An armed civilian shot the 2 14-year-olds. They've been taken to hospital for treatment. Hundreds of Israelis turned out on Friday for the funeral of Sergeant Tuvia Weissman, who was killed in the supermarket attack.
Police have arrested Uganda's main opposition candidate, Kizza Besigye, as early results from the country's presidential election showed President Yoweri Museveni is set to extend his 30-year grip on power. Critics have accused him of not tackling corruption or creating jobs and of acting increasingly like an autocrat.
Arrest me for what? And if you are arresting me, is my home a prison?
Where are you? Besigye has been arrested 3 times this week, initially for alleged criminal trespass and assault.
No, you bring him. Push him inside.
Besigye has challenged Museveni and has accused the government of manipulating the vote. Police called the accusations unfounded and outrageous.